Dadasphere Chats is an offshoot of Dadasphere, which is a platform where African women share our stories in our voices and in our own words. Welcome to Dadasphere Chats. And Mogore Jendu shared very generously about co-parenting with her ex-husband, why she's doing it, some of her lessons while doing it. Take a look at this clip, and if you want to watch the entire video, it's on Dadasphere TV on our YouTube channel. Let's take a look.
Here I am, 2 little children, and they have a dad. So we have to co-parent. Co-parenting, I know, is not something that's, a typical setup. It's definitely not ticking a box. It has no template. It has no way of, doing this in a way that makes sense to anyone. It's complex. It can be messy. And I remember literally as early as 2 weeks after my separation, we had my daughter's 2nd birthday, and we had the birthday, myself, my then husband, and our family and friends, and we're together in this birthday party for my 2-year-old, and it's in a turmoil of emotions. Co-parenting takes guts, and it takes grace.
Hi, my name is Rose Kananu. I am a consultant. I run a business called Howard Idebo Consulting. My background, civil engineer.
Oh, wow.
I'm Amani Maranga. I am the sphere in Dadasphere. No, because she said it's a platform for women, Nini. I just felt that's the only way.
That's the only reason you're here.
And also I'm around, so sphere
Really?
for Dadasphere. No, I'm a co-parent.
Uh-huh.
I'm a communicator.
Okay.
And a podcaster.
Uh-huh. Congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you.
It's doing very well. Every time you have a new episode, someone says it's in my WhatsApp group, it's in our WhatsApp group. So
it's
being
meant
shared,
to be a male
well.
space, but I've come to learn that I have a huge female audience on my podcast. Yeah.
Much like Dadasphere, we have a male audience. I'm going to start with you, I think, because you're more recently separated and coming into the co-parenting thing.
Yeah.
For the record, we're all co-parents. Even I'm a co-parent. I'm not with my son's father. But okay, so how do you deal with, I think the hardest thing with co-parenting is dealing with your emotional fallout. There's the breakup or the divorce, whatever, and then you have to be fantastic with this person you've broken up from. And then, for the sake of your child. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, now easy. At the beginning, not so easy, but not so difficult for me as well.
What's the beginning? How long ago?
At the beginning, which was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And when we went separate, we agreed at that time that we will not use the children as a weapon in this, disagreement. And we both love our children very much, and we were both concerned about how this was going to hurt them. And so I think we were able to put our differences aside when it came to the children and do what's right for the children and by the children from the very beginning. And I think that made it easy. And I think something that helped for us as well, we had done a parenting class together a few years before. And so, when we became parents, when our daughter first came, we realized we didn't know what to do with this thing, this pretty little thing,
This kablob.
This kablob.
Because they are blobs
and our
when they are
parents
blobs.
had parented us in very different styles. So we realized that we didn't have a common ground when it came to parenting. And so we went for a parenting class. This is when we were still together. And we found common ground when it came to parenting. And I feel like that played a huge role.
Because it established a shared vision.
Exactly.
Were you as conscious in your breakup and in...
I was anything but elegant. It was actually a very nasty... Because
this sounds very elegant. You're right, yes.
Very well organized. Because for me, it came unexpectedly. I found out that my ex had been in an affair with somebody else and had a child who was 2 years old. So it all came at me.
2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was totally unprepared for divorce or what. So it was just
You
a
really were
messy-
in your happy marriage, and then boom.
Yes, it was a very messy breakup. Very
Okay.
messy, and then there's a third party who also has a child. And yes, we didn't have any parenting classes, so I think for me it came the decision to co-parent probably came out of a very conscious decision on my part, not to deny my son the presence of his father.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first 3 years, I would say, were very nasty. We split up whilst we were in a foreign country. We had moved to South Africa. And a year into moving to South Africa, that's when I discovered there was somebody else, because my ex kept traveling back and forth. And you can tell that someone's hiding something. But when it blew up, then I walked out.
Okay.
Yeah. I walked out, and then he petitioned for divorce. It was messy.
That
It
is
was
so tough.
Nothing organized. Like,
Because
you
also
can
you're in a
see-
foreign country, you don't have your support system, you don't
Yes.
have your sister to
Yes.
cry to, you've gone from dual parent household
Absolutely.
to
I
single
did,
parent.
and we just moved to the foreign country. I was just a year into South Africa. I was very young. I was only 31 when we split up. Our son was 5. Then he petitioned for divorce, and the minute that happens, it completely frays
Yeah.
a marriage relationship. What I did, I remember in that first 6 months, I started going for counseling. First of all,
Well
I'd never,
done.
yes.
Because it's a lot.
First, I was the last born growing up, so I'd never really taken care of a child. Yeah, other than, and when we had our son, who was still in Kenya, so you have family, you have your mother, you have your sister. There's always, yeah. So immediately I saw things had fallen apart. I knew, okay, I'm gonna need help.
Okay.
So I started to see a psychologist, and the advice was, take care of the child's interests.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I had older colleagues as well who kind of advised, it can get very nasty when there's
Yeah.
a third party, the child gets affected.
Yeah, because the third party also has their own vested interest.
Yes.
And then when they have a child, they're like, even
I
me,
mean,
my child
even me.
matters.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed. So my ex moved back to Kenya 2 years after
Okay.
we split up. And that's when I looked at this little kid and I said, okay, I don't want to be in that marriage anymore. But because I grew up with both parents and I knew, and I was very close to my dad, and I said, I don't want to deny my child,
Yeah.
having his father present in his life.
And he already loves him and knows him.
Yes, I mean, he had grown up. So for him, it was very confusing. In fact, a year down the line, I had to put my child in therapy because it was very confusing for him. When his father moved, I decided to reach out to the other woman. You can imagine, with all the drama and agram, like, I would like my child to visit so that he can spend time with the father. So every 6 months, I would send him to Kenya
You are
to
so
spend
grown
some
up.
time. Yeah. This is the child part, the emotions part, and there was another drama happening.
Which is why you
between
needed
between the 3 adults, there
Uh-huh.
was full-on drama.
Of course.
Yeah,
When you
to-
send your son here
Yeah.
to Nairobi, it's not like for 3 hours at a time.
No.
He's here for weeks.
For 2 weeks, it would just be like 2 weeks. I remember the first week, I lay on the couch and cried every day for like 7 days. Because first, it's a 5-year-old. You can imagine you're
Yeah.
sending them to someone's house
And you don't know
who
her.
you are
fighting
with.
And you can trust that the father loves his son.
Yes.
And you know
Enough
that
to
you even
protect-
lived together, so you know that.
Yes.
But you're like, this other woman,
Yes.
who is she? What does
Yes.
she want for my
Yeah.
child?
So there was a lot of drama. I'm always curious to hear my son say, maybe one day he'll open up. But I think he went through a lot of drama because he would leave our house, our home in South Africa, come to Kenya, into this home with another mother, a brother.
Another child, yeah.
And so his life, I remember the first 2 years, his drawings, the kids, they always draw their family. He started drawing 2 moms. Yes,
Dad in the middle,
dad in the middle.
caught between.
Yeah, but what I noticed, his confusion, and sometimes it would be both moms, but By the second year, the one mother disappeared, and the mother, I think me, he had a big mother, big picture of a big mom, and then everybody else, and then eventually it was just the big mom and his world.
Why did you do it? Because I think that's something.
Yeah.
And did your family understand why you were doing it?
No.
Nobody ever said
No.
to you, you just want your ex-wife back, or you just want
Yes,
you're fighting for your man.
So yeah. So because of I think having the good thing is when I get into a place where I'm lost and confused, I'd reach out for counsel. So I had my the psychologist I see once in a while. Then I started talking to older people that had gone through divorce. But I think what cemented my decision to make sure that my son's father remained in his life was from speaking to men who had absent fathers.
Yeah.
And I remember one of them, a really close friend, recalled his mother going back to her
Her parents'
home with her children. And then he never saw his father, and he was very young. And he said when he wanted to get married, like 20 years later, he still went to look for his dad to come and go and kurashia for him, because he said there was an emptiness. And I spoke to another one, and I realized that hole that is left by an absent father can destroy a boy or a man forever.
I think even a woman. I think,
Yes.
daddy issues are real. They look different, I think, in women than they do in men, and they look different in men. But I think daddy issues are very real. The
Yes.
absence of a parent is your foundation.
Yes.
And the absence of that is trauma, I think.
It is.
It's
is.
trauma. And so
Yeah.
for me, I didn't want to participate in that at all with
Yeah.
my son or with his father. So I try to facilitate that as much as possible, getting to know his side of the family as well, like his father's sisters and whatever. So
Yeah.
my son knows his cousins. So it's not just the relationship like this is your dad, but also you have family on both sides and they love you.
Yeah.
And for me also, one of the big whys is, why would I stand in the way of people who love my son?
Yeah.
Why would I prevent you from loving him? He's wonderful.
You're grown.
Indeed.
It hasn't been easy. I'm not going to sit here and be
Yeah.
like, well, let me tell you,
No.
I'm so enlightened.
It's not easy.
That's
There
progressive.
have been moments where I'm like, oh, am I doing this?
Yeah.
See women raise children on their own and
Yeah.
they're fine. He'll get a job. He'll go for counseling.
Yeah.
And I want to identify with you because I was brought up by a single mom for the first 8 years of my life. Then she got married. She was never married with my dad. And so she got married to now, my stepdad, the man I call my father now. But that didn't work for a long time.
Yeah.
Later, as an adult, we became friends. And now we are very good friends. I mean, he's my dad. I call him dad. I named my son after him. But that gap is real. And, I just did an engaged talk, and that's what I talked about. I talked about looking for my dad, looking for my biological father.
Did you find him?
Yeah, I did when I was 18.
And?
You need to watch the engagement.
Sawa, we are telling people at dadasphere to watch Engage.
Yes.
It's
they're
fine.
not competing.
No, we're not.
But I'm agreeing with that because you're right, it's for both genders, both male and female. They'll feel the father's gap. They'll feel it if the gap is there. But I feel like for men, well, they're different. Let me not say it's more, because they're different, they're separate. So they both have high impact. But we feel very incomplete without our father figure, and especially if our real father is available. For me,
And somehow you're denied that
yeah,
relationship,
exactly.
yes.
Whether by him or by your mom or whatever it is,
Yeah.
So for me, I'd sworn that my children will always have their father, under
Okay.
whatever circumstances.
Okay. When did you think, okay, I'm getting this right? I'm getting the co-parenting thing right. When did you think that? Have you thought that? It's been 10 years.
It's been 10 years. I think for me, it's been an evolution. I've gone through a lot of phases and a lot of personal transformation.
Okay.
But I think the other thing that I did that I think also helped to stabilize for our son was reaching out and building a relationship with his grandmother, my ex's
Your mother-in-law. Your ex-mother-in-law.
My ex-mother-in-law.
Okay.
And that was something that frightened my mom a bit, because she's like, why are you going back to those people? You know, because it got so nasty. These three adults just weren't handling their business very well, and it was messing up the children. They were the kids. You know, my son would come back to South Africa and say, I was told this, and and I was like, no, this is not a healthy environment. I'm sending the child to it, might even get worse. So I started to rebuild a relationship with the mother-in-law, and I would visit her and take my son, because I knew she was going to be the neutral bridge that would allow my son and his father to build a relationship.
Nice.
But that created a lot of controversy and questions. The gossipy
Are you
relatives.
trying to use your mother-in-law to get back?
Get back the man, and
I can imagine, yes.
But somehow I just soldiered on, because for me, I saw the vision. I knew that eventually in this
was
journey...
she surprised when you reached out to her? What was her response? Did she think, hey, this one is coming back?
Yeah, I mean, even now they still think, they still consider me a daughter-in-law. And, you know, initially I would get pissed off. I'm like, I'm not with him. And even when the divorce papers were signed and we got the divorce, you know, I'm like, did you not get the memo? We are divorced. But I realized that for them, they felt, you know, we still have a daughter-in-law.
It's a context.
We still have a daughter, and especially because she never bonded with the other woman.
But it's also that there's no paradigm. You know, when you're called daughter-in-law, this is how daughters-in-law behave.
Boxes.
Yes, when you're called mother-in-law, this is how you behave, you know. But when you're an ex, when you're an ex-daughter-in-law, how do you behave?
Yeah, what's your identity?
What's
There's
your
even
identity?
such a thing as an ex-daughter-in-law.
Should she buy you a gift?
Yes.
Can she come to your house? Do you go to her house? What if you find your ex is there with his current, whoever he's with? Like, what's the protocol?
But, you know, I think those are selfish questions. They're very selfish questions.
But very real.
They're real.
It happens.
They're
I
real.
experienced it.
I agree. And maybe I've been fortunate that I have good people around me. I've been very fortunate. But this is how I think about it. My children, those are their grandparents. Her brother is my children's uncle. He's gonna spend time with them. His kids are their cousins. That's the reality of my children's life. Okay? It is in my interest to make sure that those relationships work.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay?
Yes.
And so I'm affirming in a sense.
And that you even have a voice there.
Yeah. So I'm affirming in a
Right?
sense you're reaching out to your son's grandmother. Because I believe that we parent from who we are. And so, first and foremost, I had to get to a place. So we started with, we're not fighting about the children. We're not going to use them as weapons. But we figured very quickly that we also need to be cordial, to respect each other, and to be kind to each other.
Yes.
Because children pick up on that. Okay? And I don't feel like we've gotten it right, but I think we've made incredible strides.
So I called Amani. He's like, I'm at the coast. I was like, can you even make it for the show? He's like, yes, I'll come back. I'm actually here with my children and my ex. I was like, hey,
in the same house.
Actually, you want to maturity? Because he's like, you want to discuss co-parenting? Let me tell you.
I have a story happening currently. And I think it's where you say, it's where you understand that the children live in a context. They don't live in isolation. So, and that context is that they have a mother, they have a father, and those two still have a relationship because of you, okay? And they have now, like you said, the extended family.
Extended family.
So my daughter needed to go to Mombasa for some school assessment. And initially I was going to go with her, then the mom became available. And I didn't want to leave the brother because then he'd feel left out. So we all went, the four of us. We stayed in the same apartment and we were there together for 2 days. Co-parenting. And I feel like if there was a day I needed a certificate, this is now. It is now.
You're like,
I need a co-parenting certificate.
did you look at yourself in the mirror? You're like, well done.
Well done, son. Just
Pat yourself on the back.
But she makes it very easy. To be
Okay.
honest. She makes it very easy. She's a completely mature human being. She has children's interests at heart, and she's kind and respectful. So why not? It works.
Leo ni leo. I have done it.
Yeah.
I
Hey,
have surprised
what's on the show? Now, Nina hold master class. Yeah, co-parenting.